Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening. Whoa, that was loud. Good evening, everyone. We are going to get started. It is Monday, July 8th at 6:30, and this is a special meeting of the Public Safety and Transportation as well as the Finance Committees. At the start of the meeting, present with me in the chamber, we have Councillor Gentile, Chair of the Finance Committee, Councillor Block, Councillor Humphrey, and Councillor Lipoff. Online, we have Councillors Greenberg, Malachy, Bixby, Lucas, and that is all for right now. The first item before us is a joint item, both before the Public Safety and Transportation Committee as well as the Finance Committee, and that is 260-24, a request by the mayor to transfer $650,000 to fire rescue full-time salaries. I see we've been joined this evening by Chief Gentile. Welcome, Chief, and if you would give us an overview of this item, please. Oh, and I see Ms. Lemieux, your hand is up. Did you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just start us off with this.
Sure.
At the end of April, we successfully negotiated a successor collective bargaining agreement with the firefighters. For fiscal years 25, 26, and 27. So we have a 3-year contract that goes out for these next 3 years. Because this all happened after we had already printed the budget, we, within our wage reserve in the FY25 budget, we certainly had allowances set for what we anticipated we would settle the contract for. However, the funds were not actually included in the fire department's budget. And so our request tonight is to move $650,000 out of the wage reserve into the fire department's budget to cover the cost of this contract for fiscal year 25. I just want to give you a real quick synopsis of what we got for that money and what we spent for what we got. And so the first thing, we got language that talks about if the officer who is on any piece of apparatus or scheduled to be on a piece of apparatus is not working on any given day, the chief and the assistant chief now have much more latitude to determine who it is that ought to be the officer in charge on that piece of apparatus. We were successful in gaining language that had to do with independent medical exams. We worked really hard to work through Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve and whether or not people who call in sick 24 hours before one of our super holidays, which is Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, and 4th of July, if they call in 24 hours before the holiday or 24 hours after the holiday, they are no longer eligible for holiday pay for that particular holiday. And the last thing I would say is that we got, if you will, if someone is out on admin leave or something of that nature, if they are out for more than 60 days, they do not accrue vacation or sick time for that time that they are out. Those are the things that were really important to the chief and the assistant chief to really help them better manage their department. I'll just tell you really quickly what we paid for those things, and then I'm sure you'll have questions, particularly for the chief. This contract includes a 3% COLA for each one of the 3 years. This group has less than 30% of its membership that steps, And so steps for this group cost us about 0.8% per year. And so a 3% COLA is what we felt that we could certainly offer in this case. We increased their night differential from 9% to 9.5%. We increased their non-city detail pay, so this does not impact the city, from $70 to $75 per hour. And we added an extra holiday, a 911 recognition day. All of these things together end up costing the city in fiscal 25. It will be about 3.3% that this contract adds. In 26, it's just at 3%, and in 27, it's at 3%. And so we certainly stayed within the parameters of what we know that we can afford, if you will, when we're negotiating these contracts. And as I said, the step increases for this particular group add up to about 0.8% per year. When we take all of the machinations that go into this and we combine it with our savings from attrition, we are well within the numbers that we need to be to maintain a viable and sustainable budget. And so with that, Madam Chair, I'm more than happy to turn it back to you.
Thank you. I just want to recognize that we've now been joined in person by Councillor Bixby, online by Councillor Mickley. Did I miss anyone else? Okay, great. Chief Gentile, did you want to add anything before I take questions and comments from councilors?
That was actually that was an excellent overview, but certainly be happy to answer any questions. We worked pretty hard at this contract, and we feel we did. I think it was fair for both sides, and we got some important things to help us manage the department.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gentile, did you have your hand up? Oh, no. Okay. Comments, questions? Seeing none, is there a motion in the Public Safety and Transportation Committee on this item? Councillor Lipoff moves approval. I do see a hand from Councillor Greenberg, so I'm just going to let her question come in. Councillor Greenberg, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Ms. Lemieux mentioned non-city pay. Could she explain what that is?
Certainly, if I may, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Any time, any commercial enterprises doing work, if they need to have firefighters on scene, if there's a demolition of a building and the city has required there to be firefighters on scene for the dust or whatever else could be happening, those are considered non-city details where contractors end up paying for the detail. And so that's what we increased their hourly rate for. We did not adjust the rate that they are paid if it's actually a city detail that's a detail that's ordered by the city.
So may I, Chair?
Sure.
So although it doesn't come out of the city budget, we can still say they're getting more per hour?
They are, because that's what's actually charged to the contractors. And more often than not, the contractor doesn't have any choice about hiring the detail, but that's the rate that's charged to any third party, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gentile.
Actually, I do have one question for Ms. Lemieux, and if she already answered this and I missed it, I apologize. But where are we as far as the line item that the money is coming out of the wage reserve, and do we have other contracts that we need to cover from that line item? Could you just get just a little bit of a summary on that?
Thank you, Mr. Finance Chair. We will be moving the 650 from current year wage reserve. And because this is all fiscal 25 money, this is our first contract that we are settling that's fiscals 25 through 27. We have carried forward lots of money for the police contract, which I think many of you know that we are at the JLMC with the patrol organization. We have prior year money that will pay for those retroactive years And so this is out of the fiscal 25 money. I want to say I think we put about $4 million in this year's budget. And I don't know if either Perry or Steve can look it up quickly while I'm talking.
It's 4.16 million.
Thank you. So that's how much we expect to spend on all of the contracts once we've finished negotiating them for fiscal 25. And as I said, this is the only group that we now have under contract for 25. So we will hopefully be coming to you several times this year to move that money as we make our way through settling agreements with all the different groups.
So then does this contract fit in with the strategy for that you arrived at for the 4.16 million?
Definitely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion to approve in PS&T by Councillor Lipoff. Any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we have unanimous approval. Mr. Chair.
Council Lipoff, would you be willing to make the same motion in finance? Okay. So there's a motion in finance to approve the item. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, I believe we have 8. I don't think anyone's missing.
Okay.
So I believe the vote is 8-0.
Okay, well, that concludes the joint portion of the meeting. So Councillor Gentile,
Okay,
the rest of the meeting's all yours.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now, so we're going to continue with the finance agenda. If people don't mind, I'm going to stay right here on my seat. Is that all right? Seeing no objection. So this next item is docket item 265-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to accept and expend the sum of $190,000 in grant funding from Mass DOT's Community Transit Grant Program for the city's senior transportation program, which as I understand it, is changing from the present program. So hopefully somebody can give us a little information on that.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I was expecting to see either Barney Heath or.
We have planning here.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't see them.
Can you speak into your microphone, Councilor Gentile?
You can't hear me?
Yeah, can't.
Okay.
Hi, Jen Kyra, Deputy Director of Planning. I'm happy to give some background.
Is it on, Jen?
It's on.
You just
Let me
bring it
go a
close
little
because we
higher.
got the,
How's that? Okay.
is that all right? It's
How's that?
better.
Okay, great.
We have our air conditioning working, so you really
I
need to.
can feel it. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background on this evening. So that's correct that we are transitioning or have transitioned to a new transportation system. This grant is for $190,000 from MassDOT Community Transit Program, and it's for transportation for older adults and people with disabilities. This is a grant we have received in previous years as well that we've used towards NUMO. Now for this year, we'll be putting it towards GoGo, which is the new system. So we did, starting last Monday, we did start GoGo. NUMO is still giving rides through, I believe, the end of this week, but we have been busy registering older adults, people who have disabilities, and people who are low income for this new system. where the city will be subsidizing the rides based on the tier the person qualifies for, and a certain number of rides and a certain subsidy that varies based on whether you fall into the very low income, or older adult categories. And so far, we've been quite busy registering people. We've had a number of rides so far. Overall, things seem to be going well. The service is expanded from beyond Newton. So Numo only took people within the city of Newton. GoGo will, as long as rides originate or end in Newton, will go to other locations. So going to the Longwood area, going to neighboring communities. It's, I think, very helpful for people who are looking to get to doctor's visits, things like that. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that the committee has.
Any questions? Anybody on the screen? Bless you. I don't see any questions. Let me, pardon?
Chair, I got a question.
Okay, Council Mickley.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to see how this rolls out. Just personally, I've heard some concerns from residents that, this won't offer the same type of service, the extent of service as they were used to with Numo. So wondering if there's going to be any evaluation period where we'll compare the experience of this versus what we had in Numo and potentially reconsider bringing Numo back if this doesn't meet the expectations of what service level was provided previously.
So GoGo does have a different focus. So Numo was open to anyone and was highly subsidized rides. However, the hours of service were more limited and the locations were more limited. So GoGo really is focused on those in the community who most need the transportation services, and it operates 24/7, has better customer service, 24/7 customer service, and goes to more locations. So there are definitely trade-offs, and I know there are plenty of people who were relying on Numo who don't currently qualify that are disappointed, and we will be sort of evaluating how well it's being used and the feedback we're getting from the users.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think on the customer service, it's probably subjective where people have different experience with it. I definitely hear your point on the more regular hours, but I have heard some frustrations with residents with the type of customer service that they've experienced with GoGo. And again, I know it's a change and something new, and there's probably a learning curve, but I just would hope that we can continue to evaluate it and compare and contrast with what we previously had.
We are, and the customer service, we have heard that there are long waits right now as we're trying to get everyone up and registered. GoGo also hired additional customer service representatives that they're currently training. So we have heard those wait times have been long for some folks. So we are working closely with GoGo on getting those a lot shorter. We're also registering people in person, and we're going directly to locations where there are seniors or people of low income or disabilities, working with NCDF, the Housing Authority, 2 Life Communities, to go directly to their locations and register people. So we are trying to overcome right now that initial sort of customer service lag, but once we get people up and running, we're hoping that the on-demand customer service 24/7 is a benefit.
Thank you.
So were we unhappy with the work of Numo, and so therefore we started to look for a different vendor? Or were we weren't unhappy with Numo, it was just that we wanted to maybe get a different or serve a different target group?
So our contract was up with VIA, who was the operator for Numo, and so we did evaluate several proposals. GoGo was ultimately the one that was chosen as being able to provide more of the service we were looking to provide. Numo was also very expensive, so to provide those deeply subsidized rides to everyone in Newton was incredibly expensive.
Okay. I think that Council Mickley makes a good point about, evaluating the new vendor. Did this was this discussed at budget time with the appropriate committee, or has there been any discussion with any of the committees of the city council, or is this the first time that we're hearing about it?
No, there was another docket item that was discussed. That was discussed purely about the switch. I'm trying to see if I can.
Was it programs and services?
It might have been programs and
Okay.
services, but yes, there was a separate docket item just to discuss the switch to GoGo. This item was just to accept this grant.
Right. Council Mickley, it may make sense to docket an item to ask for, 6 months in, to get an update on how things are going, and docket it maybe with programs and services, just a suggestion. Because I think it is good for us to follow up.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the grant?
I'll move it.
Council Bixby had moved it already. Thank you. All right, so the motion's made to approve. All those in favor of 265-24, please say aye.
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 Is there anyone in opposition? Is there anyone abstaining? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Jen. Thanks for coming in. Okay, next item is 261-24. Her Honor the Mayor requesting authorization to transfer the sum of $25,000 from the FY24 reserve funds current year budget reserve to the FY24 Health and Human Services Administration full-time salaries. I see no one else in the chamber. Is there anybody online that's here to present this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's Maureen, if I can start this. And
Okay.
then we have our new Commissioner of Health and Human Services, Shin-Yi Lau, is also here. But I will at least begin the conversation. This is for fiscal 24 money. So the fire department, that was fiscal 25 money that we were asking for. This is fiscal 24 money. As you know, our longtime employee, the former commissioner now of Health and Human Services, retired effective June 28th. And so we had a significant payout of vacation time and earned sick leave time that always accrues when we have long-term employees retiring. We also, this is a bit of a trickier department, more so than the others, because in the health department, we also pay our nurses throughout the summer. Their contract really goes from September 1st through August 31st. And so when we get to the end of the year, if we have a large payout, as we did in the case with Commissioner Walsh, we were a little concerned that we might just barely overrun the total salary expenditures for this division. And so that's why we're asking for these funds. Any funds that are not expended to pay for either the nurses' salaries or for the payout for the former commissioner will drop straight to free cash. So whether, this money will, most of it, if not almost all of it, will end up in free cash, but we've just transferred it to give ourselves, we're asking to transfer it to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room through the summer as we pay out all the nurses.
Okay. Ms. Lau, first of all, congratulations on your new position and welcome to finance. Why don't I turn it over to you to see if you have anything to add?
Thank you so much. I don't have anything to add at this point, but I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Okay, questions? Any questions? I can come up with some if no one else has them. So, Ms. Loud, I know in the past that hasn't been the easiest thing to find, especially school nurses, to staff all of the schools. Is that still the case, or are we better off these days?
I'd say we're still, it's still challenging to hire school nurses, and so we are still working very hard to try to get some people in, but we've had some promising interviews, so we are hopeful for the fall.
Okay. And nurses, as Maureen mentioned, they're actually paid for the year. Do they have any duties during the summer, or this is just a common practice that school nurses get paid throughout the year?
They don't have regular duties over the summer. Some of them do work extra in the extended school year programs. That's sort of a separate thing. I don't actually know the answer to whether this is a common practice. I believe it's because they're part of HHS, but Ms. Lemieux may know better.
Thank you, Commissioner, Mr. Chairman. Much like the teachers, the nurses are really contracted to work for a school year. So their total salary is really based on them working for 10 months. Much like the teachers either could get paid their full salary in 10 months or could get a balloon payment at the end of June, or I think can get paid throughout the summer. The nurses work the same way, so that anyone who's getting paid over the course of the summer, it's really part of what their total contract was for the work that they've already done for this past school year.
Okay, and that's pretty standard in different cities and towns?
Yes, in
Okay.
fact, I think a majority of cities and towns across the Commonwealth actually have their nurses as part of the school department. And so their contracts are negotiated by the school committees. Our nurses happen to like very much being part of the city side and being part of HHS and being part of really what we see as public health here in the city. So they're a little bit of an anomaly for us on the municipal side.
Okay. Councilor Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciated the question that you just asked, and I'll just reiterate the point that I've made in quite a few committee meetings over the past year, which is that I'm very concerned about these positions continuing to go unfilled for so long and having to rely on very expensive temporary coverage. My concern is largely that this is a very competitive environment now for hiring nurses, and they really have almost their pick of anywhere they want to work. And so, I'm worried that the salaries that we're offering is just not reflective of the market conditions at this point, and there's not a lot of relief in sight on that front because there's just a state and national shortage of nurses relative to the need. Thank you.
Councilor Bixby, you're all set? Anyone else? Before I ask for a motion, Ms. Lau, this is unrelated to this docket item, but since you are here, I lived for many, many years in West Newton before I moved all the way to Auburndale, but I still have a lot of friends in the old hood, and they never ask me for anything. But recently I got a call because they are having a rodent issue. And I know that health is limited in what they can do, but I also know that there are some things that can be done with regard to educating and so forth. So if you don't mind, if you could expect a call from me tomorrow, I could really use some help with this. As I said, they never asked me for a blessed thing, and this is the first time in a long time, and I'd like to see if we could try and help them out, okay?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to chat.
Thank you. All right, is there a motion to approve the item?
So moved.
All right, motion made by Council Lipoff. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. And The last item is 241-24. This is her honor the mayor requesting authorization to appropriate and expend the sum of $72,608,506 and to authorize a general obligation borrowing of an equal amount for the construction of the Franklin School project. And also, as always, authorization to apply any premium received upon the sale of the bonds or notes, less the cost of preparing, issuing, and marketing them, and any accrued interest received of the bonds and notes to the cost of the project to reduce the amount that we end up authorizing. All right, this was approved in public facilities by a vote of 6-0 to 1. I see that our building commissioner, Josh Morse, is here. I assume he's going to start it off, or Maureen, however you want to handle it.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick things off. So thank you very much. I appreciate everybody taking the time this evening. I know that you have a full council meeting coming up after this. I have a presentation that we recently gave that I'm happy to go through. It's the design presentation. I'm also happy to just jump right into the finance related comments and questions. The format that you see in your attached backup is the same. It should look very familiar. It's the same as we've used for Countryside and for our previous school projects. The breakdown is identical. Our line item control is the same. You know, I'm happy to answer questions within those lines. I do want to just, if nothing else for anybody listening to the meeting, I don't want you to think that we just show up and ask the city council for $72 million without some process ahead of time. We began the project several years ago now. We've had, I think, more than 90 public meetings where Countryside has been discussed, and we've sent out more than 75 email correspondence, in addition to strong social media outreach and several other mechanisms. We've had a very strong following in the Countryside community with this project. It's been extremely positive. Our meetings have been well attended, and they've been, the neighbors and folks that live further away have all been very, very helpful as we've navigated the process.
Josh,
We've got,
Josh,
sorry, go ahead.
You mentioned Countryside a couple times, but
I'm sorry.
You hear so
Franklin.
much with so many projects. I think you're meaning to say Franklin, just for the record.
I am meaning to say Franklin. I'm very sorry. Yes, I was thinking about the comparison of the two budget sheets, but yes, the Franklin School. So some of you may have seen our presentation, and the numbers I just mentioned on the meetings and the outreach are correct for Franklin, not Countryside. So we went to public facilities on June 20th. Some of you were there, had the pleasure of seeing that presentation. Our design is in a very good place. We are working with our direct abutters to work on some mitigation there. Just from a high level so that folks know, the building is, the decision was made quite some time ago. We're going to build new on the fields. The superintendent just recently delivered the message and concurred with my recommendation based on a lot of community collaboration that the Franklin School stay in the current building while the new building is constructed. As I mentioned before, we are in schematic design. The funds that we're requesting now will allow us to complete schematic design, move into design development, and then ultimately construction documents and go out to bid. The overall project schedule has us starting construction in the summer of 2025 and completing in the summer of 2027 to begin the 2027-2028 school year. So we're in very good shape, and I would ask the chair if he would like me to go through the design presentation, or we can go straight into question and answer on the budget itself.
I would suggest that, because I know you've given this presentation several times, and I think we did it during the budget.
Yep.
So I'm personally fine with you, just anything else that you want to add about finances, but I don't think we need to get into this, the designs, all the different designs that you went through and so forth. If somebody on the committee has a question, certainly it's in order, but I don't think we need to take up the time. You've been through it enough, given to enough presentations on it. Anybody So is there anything else you wanted to add on the finances?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, I'm happy to get into the details on any one of these lines. If folks have questions on any of the primary lines within the budget backup, I have the details in front of me.
So it's a big number, but it just is reflective of the costs of everything these days. I mean, do you have a sense of, like, with our earlier projects, what we were paying, say, on a square foot basis for Anger Service, even maybe what we were budgeting for Countryside and what we're up to now?
So, yeah, no, it's a great question. So I would say that we were on an order of magnitude, we were probably around $600 a square foot for Anger Service Cabot. Really, Anger Service Cabot was a little different with the ad reno. Right now we're at about $800 a square foot total project budget. If you look at MSBA, they have a great, and I would encourage anybody to check this out. I'm happy to send the link out. They have a great tracking tool online that tracks all of the school construction projects that receive MSBA funding. If you look at Anger Service and Cabot, we were right in the middle on all three of those. So we weren't the highest, we weren't the lowest, we were kind of right down the middle on those. Countryside and Franklin, it's early, but we're projected to be right in the middle as well. Costs are up significantly straight across the board. The pandemic elevated those costs significantly. The escalation has cooled. It's more predictable, but we're not expecting any kind of deflation. Right now, most of your cost estimators are projecting somewhere between 3 and 4% increase in escalation annually. So that's kind of big picture where we're at.
Okay. And as far as the board order, the line items are important because I believe if you needed to switch money or transfer money, say from one of the line items to that is under budget to a line item that is over budget, I believe you need to come back to us, right?
That's correct, Counselor, and it's a good system of checks and balances. You might think that from my position, I would like to have a lump sum with no level of checks and balances, but quite frankly, I like to put myself in your position and the position of our constituents. That would not be a great precedent to set. So I actually like having some level of line item control.
Okay. And once you get started, I mean, I know you're pretty good about giving updates. What can we expect for, updates on the project and how it's falling in line as far as the budget?
Yeah, so great question, Counselor. We do, so there is obviously the comptroller's office. Steve and his team can see everything kind of real time as we're moving money around. Well, I should say not real time because that happens out in the field, but as money is moved, he has an opportunity to see that. We also do the same thing. We do our own tracking. We look at this weekly throughout the project. It's important that we understand what potential change orders are coming down the line, how we look from a contingency standpoint, any allowances, soft costs. So we're constantly tracking that. We also are backed up by our owner's project manager. They do the same thing in this case with Franklin, that's CHA. So they'll be watching the finances as well. And then we have reports that go out. I believe we do monthly on that.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Council Bixby. Oh, yes.
Thank you. So this is a question about the funding mechanisms, I guess. So part of this was authorized with the override vote, yes. So what does that do to our bonding abilities and responsibilities in regards to this project? Maybe for Ms. Lemieux.
My apologies. Could you repeat that, Counselor?
So part of this project funding was authorized by the override vote, yes?
Yes.
So, but it seems to be a small portion of the project. So what does this do to our overall bond ability as a city going forward? And I guess maybe you could just talk to us a little bit about why it was a small piece that was put forward for the override vote.
Actually, the full amount is what was put forward for the override vote. When what you may be thinking of is when we went out asking people for the override, what appears to be a small amount is what the actual annual debt service that we would project on this project to be. So the school, the entire project is intended to be funded with the debt exclusion.
Great, thank you. That's what I had remembered, and then I was doing some quick looking
Okay.
around. So I appreciate that clarification, and I think that helps a lot. Thank you. So that puts it all in good perspective. So I appreciate that. My second question is for Commissioner Morse, I guess. Do we have any cost savings or expenses by doing a number of projects at once in your estimation? It seems like we've got a bunch of big school projects happening. And do you have thoughts on whether we have benefits or potential costs based on that?
Yeah, so I would say there's no increased cost in doing them all at once. It may put a few more gray hairs on my head, but there are some savings because the longer you stretch out a capital plan like that, the more escalation you end up eating on a project of this size, and it's pretty significant for a project like this. That's millions of dollars by being able to accelerate it. So if you remember early on, we talked about Countryside going from 2025 to 2027 for construction, and then Franklin going from 2027 to 2029. So our ability to move Franklin School up those 2 years, that's 2 years worth of escalation, several $1 million that the taxpayers are not going to have to shoulder.
Okay. Council Maliki.
Thanks. I was just curious. I'm really excited by the geothermal and wondering, is this something we're going to be able to do for all future school projects, maybe even if they're renovations and not complete replacements?
It's a great question, Counselor. So, and I'm glad you mentioned that. The other thing I should point out is that the geothermal system is anticipated to provide as much as $6 million in federal grant rebates. It's federal, so it's going to take some time to get that money back, but it's real. There's a lot of money that is being thrown at projects like this. As far as to directly answer your question, right now our plan is for any major renovation or new construction that we're definitely going to be fossil fuel free, we'll be fully electric on site. It's going to be a case-by-case basis as to whether or not it's geothermal or some form of air source heat pump. I would like to fully commit to geothermal, but each site is a little different. Some sites are very small. There is some promising technology with angled drilling that might be able to create opportunities with smaller sites to be able to meet the total well count required to meet the heating and cooling load counts. But that's my only hesitation. And I would say the other thing, quite frankly, that we'll be watching closely is our presidential election, because the Inflation Reduction Act may very well be modified depending on the outcome of that election, which could make the economics on geothermal and solar, for that matter, very, very different.
I was wondering about that. Is the 6 million or so, is that definite regardless of who wins the election?
There's no definites in DC, and I certainly don't want to opine myself on that.
Okay, thank you.
Maureen, is your hand up to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is, and we may want to recognize Comptroller Steve Curley also. You will see that there's a difference in the amount of money that Commissioner Morse requested, which was 71,405, and the amount that's in front of you. And I believe, but I think our comptroller can answer this. When we started this project, we actually authorized spending some of the ARPA funds on this project. Once the debt exclusion was approved, our intent was to carry this full project as part of the debt exclusion and repurpose those ARPA funds. And so if anyone is looking at this and seeing a discrepancy between those two numbers, I want to say that that's what I believe it is, and I don't know if we need Mr. Curley to jump in,
All right, because I'd
just
like,
so that everybody's completely clear on what it is that you're voting for.
yeah, so Steve, if we should be approving a different number, could you explain that and give us the number?
Yes, thank you. So I was just looking at this. I didn't get the backup before this afternoon. But the ARPA funding was $100,000. There was the $1.15 million item that was a bond authorization for the feasibility study, which we borrowed in March as debt exclusion. So that money has already been borrowed. So to me, it would be a matter of, and I think this would be Ms. Lemieux's decision, but it would be the requested of the 71,458,506, and then a matter of whether we would include the 100,000 of ARPA or not. But I believe the 72,608,506 is incorrect, because we've already borrowed that money and we already had the authorization to borrow it.
So you think it should be 71,458,000 and how much?
506, either that or that number plus 100,000 of ARPA, as Ms. Lemieux mentioned that she was intending to move the 100,000 of ARPA out and use that as bonded funds.
But if I can just jump in, Steve, because we actually went back and forth a lot. The money that was bonded, we will be using the debt excluded funds to pay for what was bonded.
Yes.
So that million 150 needs to be part of what the total was. So the number in front of you, the 72 million, and change, the numbers on the docket item are correct. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that when we jump started the project, we used other funds. And once we knew that the debt exclusion was approved, then now we are moving the entire project to debt exclusion.
So Maureen, you're saying that you believe the correct number is the docket item number of 72,608,506, correct?
Yes. And that's, as we said, the entire project. So we will hopefully get money back for the geothermal work. We certainly are hoping that we won't actually spend 72+ million, but we need you to authorize that to begin with.
Steve?
Well, the 1.15 was already authorized May 1st of 23, which was after the debt exclusion vote. So that was authorized to borrow for the feasibility study. And then we did borrow it this March. So I think including it under the 72,608 would be duplicating that figure.
I mean, if you already authorized $1 million, whatever, 115 or whatever, it would seem to me that we don't need to include that in this amount. But again, I just want to make sure there's agreement. Maureen?
I certainly don't want to hold this up tonight. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll actually leave it to you. What we wrote is what I thought was correct.
All right, but again, the issue that Steve's raising is the total amount is the $72 million figure. However, we have already authorized over $1 million. So it kind of makes sense to me that we shouldn't be authorizing that a second time, that we should be authorizing the 72 million minus the million plus that we have already authorized. And I think we already we already bonded that amount, did we not?
And so as long as Steve, as long as you're confident that the $1,150,000 was authorized as part of debt exclusion.
When when the debt exclusion passed, that allows us to borrow against Franklin as debt exclusion. And that
Right.
was in what, March of 23? And
Correct.
then we had it was item 126-23 on May 1st, to borrow the 1.15 million. And then we borrowed it in March of this year.
Okay, so then, Mr. Chair, I think if we just add 100,000, the 71, and if for some reason we ever think that this was not correct, we will come back to you. But certainly if the 1,150,000 was approved as part of debt exclusion, then we would be all set with that.
All right, so then we should add, you're saying to add 100,000 back to the number that Steve gave us because of the ARPA money. So if I'm
Correct.
hearing everybody correctly, the number that I should ask that be amended in finance, it should be $71,558,506. Do we agree
Yes.
on that?
Yes, that's what I have.
Okay. All right. Any other, are there any other questions before I ask for an amendment? All right, seeing none, Councilor Bixby is moving an amended number of $71,558,506. Okay? On the amendment, are there any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposition? Anybody abstaining? All right, so the motion passes unanimously. So now can we get a motion on the amount or the docket item as amended, which is now $71,558,506?
I'll move it.
All right, Counselor, was that Counselor Maliki?
Yep.
All right, Counselor Maliki moves it. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor of 241-24 as amended, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. I believe that concludes our business. These items will be reported out shortly at our full council meeting. I thank everybody unanimously coming in early to take care of this business. Alex, you were outstanding as always. Thank you for being here. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, the finance meeting is adjourned for this evening, and we'll see you at the full council. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all.